Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel Investor Diaries. So we have been talking a lot about equity investing and we've been giving tips and suggestions on which stocks to pick. Today we are kicking off a new series of videos on equity on home ownership and mortgages. And we're trying to cover a lot of aspects with respect to mortgages, renting, ownership, the pros and cons, etc. And there are quite a lot of topics to cover, and it would be a series of videos. Let's start to think about what are the key considerations a person should have while deciding to rent.
Yeah, so one of the key questions you might face is when should you be renting? And I've broken it into three different components. So first one is you aren't really sure of settling down. So for instance, you're just starting off your career or you're in a job which is transferable and you don't really know where your permanent posting would be, or you think that at some point of time in the future, maybe a couple of years down the line, you might have to go to a different city. So in all these situations, when you have uncertainty as far as your long-term plans are concerned, that would be a good time to rent. And you can use the next few months or years to zero down on your plan before you think about buying. So that would be one. The other thing would be the obvious one, and that is buying a house requires upfront payment and you don't really have it, like you've just started off your career or you've used that money for some other purpose, and that would be a time in which you would rather save that money. You would find out how much money you need, say for down payment or such, and you would continue to rent during that time. And the third one would be, and I think this is really important, is if you're carrying debt. So for instance, if you're carrying a credit card debt which is close to 20% or a line of credit debt, then you are paying a significant amount of money as interest on all of that debt. So you should try to pay down that debt and then think about owning a particular house or even a condo.
Right. Yeah. So those are great points, and the point number three, especially when you have high interest debt, the key focus should be paying down that debt. So it could be a credit card debt or personal line of credit debt or whatever. Right. These are really interesting points. So now let's talk about when should you start thinking of buying a property, a real estate, or when should you venture into real estate investment. So the couple of points Appy talked about. So the first point is you haven't decided which city or which place that you would like to live in long term. So let's assume that you have finally decided a city, or you're going to be in this particular city for 3 to 5 years, and in the city as well, different areas, different suburbs in the city, right? Like you have a preference for a bunch of factors, or because of good school districts, the crime in that area is low. You've honed in on a place, so that's a good time to good point to check off to buy. The other aspect is you're ready for the responsibilities of being a homeowner. So home ownership requires a lot more responsibilities, like taking care of maintenance, taking care of if there is any repairs, something breaks down, you are responsible to fix it, right? There's You no longer can call a landlord to help you with it. So those responsibilities as well, and this is apart from the financial responsibilities that come with the home ownership, which is a good segue into my point number three. So you have some capacity to put down a down payment. So that's the third point that we want to talk about, when to buy. So let's say you have watched some of our videos in the past about equity investing, and you made significant gains in some of the equities that you've invested. So you have some capacity to buy. Typically, at least in North America, you're required to put down at least 5% of your the real estate investment as a down payment, and the rest you can borrow. And there are some pros and cons with that as well, but you need some upfront cash. So these are the key things that you need to consider. And apart from that, point number four is you need to analyze your family's financial capability and risk appetite. So you need to assess your savings, So, and determine the monthly outflows, cash outflows that you would have once you get into real estate investment. So, a good thumb rule to follow here is that your monthly cash outflow is about typically 25 to 30% of your total net income. So, let's say to keep things simple, if you're making your net income is about 10,000K in a month, which is pretty high, I acknowledge, but just to keep the math simple, your total outflow is about $2,500 to $3,000 in a month for home ownership. Another way to also look at it is you can calculate your monthly outflows today, whatever situation you are in. Like if you're renting, then you pay rent, you pay insurance, you pay parking, utilities, maintenance, etc. All that. How much does it come up to? And when you decide to go in to buy a property, what does that outflow compare to? So let's say when you're renting, your current situation, your monthly outflow is X. When you're buying a property, is that going to be X plus, let's say, 100 or $500? And if it's X plus 500, is it something that you or your family can afford to pay down every month, right? So those are the key factors you need to consider when you decide to actually buy into a property.
Yeah, great points, Nitish. I think doing the math is really, really important when you do a holistic comparison between renting a place versus owning a place. So we should be aware of all the inflows and outflows that we're going to have. Most of it is outflows, of course. And then we should take a decision based on what's best for us. However, let's assume that you've taken a decision to own a place, and then we'll probably like to cover some of the aspects of owning a place. So the first one, which is really, really important, and this builds into the math that we'll be talking about, is you build equity. So when I'm renting, all the rent that I pay, it's essentially money out of my wallet, it's sunk cost. However, when I'm owning a place, then I build equity. So all the principal payments I make towards my mortgage, that is equity in the house, and that equity tends to appreciate over a longer period of time. Second, real estate, it's generally a good investment. So although nothing in life is constant, but here as far as real estate is concerned, if I look at say the Canadian market over a period of past 25-30 years, real estate has proven to be a sound investment which gives considerable returns to the owners of the house. The third one is stability. Now, imagine you are renting a particular place, then you are at the mercy of your landlord who can determine how much rent you are going to be paying the next year because you are liable for rent increase. Now, I agree that and I acknowledge that there are certain places in which you have some rent control or rent freeze, but at the same point of time there are a lot of apartments in which you do not have rent control and the landlord actually can increase the rent by a significant margin.
Yeah. So those are really great points on the benefits of home ownership, right? Now, a key consideration or a key question most people might be having is it better to rent or is it better to own? Now, we did go over a few factors about when is the best time to rent and when is the best time to buy. Whether is it better to rent or own, the answer is it really depends. It really depends on your circumstance. It really depends on your situation. A lot of it comes down to the math behind your monthly outflows and looking at your certain risk appetite. Remember, currently in today's low interest rate scenario, it's probably a good time to borrow, take out a mortgage because your mortgage is typically a 4 or 5 year fixed term. You're looking at about 1.69, which is really, really low. There are factors where renting makes financial sense to rent out, and there are certain situations where it makes financial sense to own. Typically, as we talked about before, if you have some down payment, some cash to put in as a down payment, or some disposable income that you can afford in your net cash flow, typically about 25 to 30%, it is typically a good time to buy an ownership. So these are a few key things that we wanted to just start off with in an introduction to our mortgage series. We will talk a lot more details about mortgages and how to go about it. Any other considerations, Appy, that you want to provide?
Good thoughts, Nitish. I think in one of our next videos, we can think about doing a one-to-one comparison between renting and owning. So we play around with, say, actual numbers as such, which could help some of our viewers decide if renting is good for them or they should jump the gun and go towards being homeowners.
Right. Yeah. And then the other key thing is also, once you decide to actually get into a home ownership scenario, what are the key considerations? When do you get a mortgage? What do you need to do before mortgage? When do you start go looking, etc.? So we'll try to go over those factors as well in our upcoming videos. So for now, we would like to conclude. So thanks everyone for tuning in to this episode of Investor Diaries, and stay tuned for more.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice one.